Hey Panthers, here is week 2 math homework for Tuesday. Due to technical difficulties, I already started problem number 1. I will go through and walk through what I did with that first step because you won't be able to see it. So using order of operations to solve this expression, we always need to think about PEMDAS, or please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division, and addition and subtraction. So to begin this problem, we'll start with our P parentheses. These brackets may look a little bit unfamiliar to you, however, they are still considered parentheses. They're just different. They look different so that you don't get them too confused. So my first step was in the smallest parenthesis, 20 plus 7. So I did that math and I got 27. And then I rewrote everything else that I didn't touch. So now that you're back with me, I'm going to continue on the problem and the rest of the assignment. From here, we are actually going to use the distributive property to distribute this 3 into the 27. From there, whenever we see a number on the outside of a parenthesis, we know that we are multiplying those numbers. So we need to multiply 3 times 27. I've already done that math. That is 81. So that's going to be the answer to this problem. Then I'm going to rewrite every one of my numbers that I didn't touch. So now I have 4 times 2.5 plus 81. So I'm still working in my P parentheses. I already moved on to E exponents yet. I'm still up here in P. So these brackets are still considered P parentheses, so I still need to do them first. So now I need to add 81 plus 2.5. A very common misconception that I've seen on a lot of people's work is that they are adding these two, but they are forgetting to line up that decimal. Okay, so even though 81 does not have a decimal, we can put a placeholder decimal and a 0. And now we add these two together. So 0 plus 5 is 5. My decimals are lined up. 1 plus 2 is 3, and 8 plus 0 is 8. So that answers 83.5. So my answer to this, 83.5. And then I'm going to rewrite everything else I didn't touch. So our last step of problem number 1 is to multiply. Because whenever I see a number on the outside of my parentheses, I have to distribute that number. And when I distribute, I am multiplying. So our last step is 4 times 83.5, which is 334. So your final answer to number 1 is 334. I did that math off camera, so sorry. Looking at number 2, this is dividing fractions. When we're dividing fractions, the biggest things that we need to think about is keep, change, flip. Okay? And when we do keep, change, flip, each letter correlates to one of the things in our expression. So we're going to keep our first number, 4/15. And then we're going to change our division sign to a multiplication sign. And then we're going to flip our 1/6. We're going to flip it to its reciprocal of 6/1. Then, once we have a multiplication problem, we can just multiply straight across to come up with this answer. So we've got 4 times 6, which is 24. And then I've got 15 times 1, which is 15. If you want to get really fancy and simplify this, you can do just regular division, 15 into 24, because I have an improper fraction. So my numerator is larger than my denominator, so I know that I have more than 1. So that's why I need to simplify this. 15 goes into 24 one time. 1 times 15 is 15, and when I do this subtraction, I'm borrowing. 14 minus 5 is 9. So I get 1, which is my answer here, and my remainder is 9, and my denominator is going to stay the same. So we have 1 and 9/15. Or 24/15, whichever one that you could come up with. Number 3 is dividing. This problem actually said that the girl made $42,786 a year. How much does that make per month in a month, or per year? And there are 12 months in the year, so they want to know how much money she makes per month. So whenever we're doing multi-digit division, the easiest way to come up with this answer is to go to the side and do your multiplication facts. Therefore, this division part seems easy. In this case, a 12 is something that you should already know your multiplication facts for. And if you don't, you need to be working on that during this break. So you might not need that for this one. And if you didn't use it, that's okay. But I'm still going to go ahead and do this. So doing my multiplication facts, 12 times 1 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. 12 times 3 is 36. 12 times 4 is 48. 12 times 5 is 60. And 12 times 6 is 72. So I'm going to be using these numbers to do this division problem. First question I need to ask myself, how many times does 12 go into 42? Looking at the side, 12 goes into 42 3 times. 3 times 12, right over here, is 36. When I do that, I'm going to do my subtraction. I cannot take away 2 minus 6, so I have to borrow from my 4. My 4 becomes a 3. My 2 becomes a 12. 12 minus 6 is 6. 3 minus 3 is 0. My next step is bringing it down. Bring down my 7. How many times does 12 go into 67? 12 goes into 67 5 times. 5 times 12 is 60. Do that subtraction. 7 minus 0 is 7. 6 minus 6 is 0. Bring it down. Bring down our 8. 12 goes into 78 6 times. 6 times 12 is 72. Do that subtraction here. 8 minus 2 is 6. 7 minus 7 is 0. And then this is our last, bring it down. So 12 goes into 66 5 times. 5 times 12 was 60. And we do 6 minus 0, is 6. 6 minus 6 is 0. So our final answer here is 3,565 with a remainder of 6. But if you wanted to write that as a fraction, we could write it as 3,565. My remainder was 6, so that's going to be my numerator. And my denominator is going to be my divisor, which was 12. So 3,565 and 6/12. Let's look at this one right here. We are multiplying decimals. Whenever you are multiplying decimals, the easiest thing to do is to get the decimal out of the multiplication problem. And we just multiply normally. So in this case, I moved my decimal of my first number 1 time. I moved my decimal of my second number 2 times. So altogether, I moved my decimal 3 times. I'm going to put that 3 up top just to hold it into my head so that I remember when I come up with my final answer, I have to put that decimal back 3 places to be exact. Once you get rid of it, you just multiply it normally. 3 times 6 is 18. We're going to put our 8 below, and we're going to carry our 1. 3 times 4 is 12 plus 1, which is 13. 3 times 8 is 24. Plus 1 is 25. 3 times 5 is 15. Plus 2 is 17. So when you finish with this 3, we have to make sure that we put a placeholder below. And then we can go ahead and multiply our 7. 7 times 6 is 42. We are going to put our 2 below, carry our 4. 7 times 4 is 28. Plus 4, so 32. 7 times 8 is 56, plus 3. 56, 57, 58, 59. And 7 times 5 is 35, plus 5 is 40. So when I add up these two numbers, we'll do 8 plus 0, which is 8. 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 plus 2 is 7. 9 plus 7 is 16. 1 plus 1 is 2. 4 plus 0 is 4. And then we have to make sure that we put our decimal spot back 3 places. So 1, 2, 3. So your final answer is 426 and 758 thousandths. Okay, looking at number 5, it said to write this problem using the distributive property. So we know that the distributive property is when there is a number on the outside of a parenthesis, and this number is going to multiply those numbers. So when we try to come up with this, we need to come up with a number that can go both into, so a factor of both 30 and of 75. I'm going to use the number 5. So I'm going to put my 5 on the outside of my parenthesis. The reason why I chose 5 is because I know that both 30 and 75 are divisible by 5. So when I put my 5 on the outside, I know that whatever I put it in here and I can multiply by, it's going to give me an even 30. So 5 times 6 will give me 30. I'm going to leave my operation the same, so I'm going to keep it in addition. And 5 times 15 will give me 75. So this problem, using the distributive property, I can rewrite it as 5 times 6 plus 15. And to check myself there, I can just do the math, see if it works, and if it doesn't, I can retry. So if I use the distributive property here, I'm going to do 5 times 6, which is 30, and then 5 times 15, which is 75. So my answer matches the original problem, so I know it's a good spot. Looking at number 6, this was completing a table for adults and the children. I can see over here on the adult side, it's going up by 2, up by 2, up by 2. So on this side, for my children's side, when trying to figure out these next 2 numbers, trying to create a pattern. So this one's plus 1, so I'm just going to make this one plus 1 and plus 1. So your 2 answers here were 3 and 4. Another way you could have figured that out is by using your adults to children ratio. So if you divided by 2, if you're going cross, 2 divided by 2 is 1, 4 divided by 2 is 2, 6 divided by 2 is 3, 8 divided by 2 is 4. So many ways to figure out the answers to that table, however you came up with, but these tables will be getting a little bit harder. So hopefully you're figuring out some patterns. For this one, the girl had gotten 36 points on 6 questions. So they're wondering how many points was it per question. Whenever we see that per 1, we in our head should be thinking unit rates, not Bates, even though it looks like a B. Okay, so when we have a unit rate, we are going to determine how much is it for 1 question. So with 6 questions was 36, we have to figure out what can I divide 6 by to get to 1. I can divide that by 6. Whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So I'm going to divide the top by 36. 36 divided by 6 is 6. So I know that each question was worth 6 points. Next one, this was if she was selling lemonade at $1.50 and then she put it on sale for 90 cents, what percentage off was that new glass of lemonade? So to figure this out, I need to figure out what is 10% of this number. Whenever we're figuring out what 10% is, you need to move your decimal 1 spot to the left. So once I move my decimal 1 spot to the left, this number becomes 15 cents. So 10% of $1.50 is 15 cents. If she's selling these lemonade glasses for 90 cents, I got to figure out what can I multiply 15 by to get to 90. Once I figure that out, I'll be able to determine what percentage that this 90 cents is. So 15 times 6 is 90. So I'm going to do whatever I do to one side, I'm going to do to the other. So 10% times 6 would be 60%. So right now, she is selling these glasses of lemonade for 90 cents, and that's 60% of her normal amount. So if they're asking me, how much percentage off are they getting? 100% is our normal. She's selling these for 60%. So we have 40% off. That's going to be your final answer, is 40% off. Last question is, can you figure out how many how many feet is 84 inches? If 1 foot is 12 inches, we have to figure out what can I multiply 12 by to get to 84. 12 times 7 would give me 84 inches. So whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So I'm going to multiply 1 foot times 7. So I know that there is 7 feet and 84 inches. See you tomorrow.